Hey, I want to talk LSU basketball, and I want to ask you about Bo Pelini a little bit down the road because I know you cover college basketball and football. But obviously, you're out in LA, and I've got to imagine still just a weird feeling there with the Kobe Bryant um, situation where, it's just one of those deals where you see the scenes at the Staples Center and just thousands of fans gather there. And Kobe was such a figure. I mean, he was LA basketball, and I've got to imagine it's a tough scene right now.
Yeah, well, and I know you lived out here for a while, Jake. And it's funny the way that you just phrased that he was LA basketball because what I always tell people, and certainly what I've told people a lot the last 24 hours, is so I'm from Connecticut originally, but I've lived in LA for about 8 years. And when I meet people, literally up until last week, people will say, oh, what do you do? And I tell them I work in sports. Oh, I'm a huge Kobe fan. It's never I'm a big basketball fan. It's never, and I'm not even kidding when I say it's not even I'm a Lakers fan. It was always I'm a big Kobe fan before they mentioned the Lakers. And so, he was one of these guys that transcended basketball. And I think in this city, he even transcended the brand of the Los Angeles Lakers. And I'll share a quick story because I think it kind of personalizes it a little bit. But, my wife, I've been married now for like 6 months, but we've been together quite a long time. And she wasn't born here in the United States. She immigrated here when she was about 4 or 5 years old. And, the way that, her and her family got kind of accustomed and used to kind of American culture was sitting down and watching the Lakers. And obviously when she was a kid, you think back to when Kobe and Shaq played, there was no smartphones, there was no iPhones. And so her whole family would get together, watch Kobe, watch Shaq. And for those moments, they felt like they were, American like the rest of us. And she mentioned that to me yesterday, and that really stuck with me. And it's stories like that. There are thousands of stories like that across this city. I've been listening to radio a little bit as I've been running errands this morning. And everyone's got a story similar to that one. I was just using that one because it's kind of from my personal life, but it's insane. And like you said, the whole city is it's just a bizarre scene.
It really seemed like he was setting something up post career that was going to be just as special as his playing career, the Mamba Academy. The entire thing, just a truly tragic day. Aaron Torres is our guest from Fox Sports Radio as we try to transition and continue to talk LSU basketball as we have you on last week. And we talked about the Big 12 SEC Challenge. LSU takes care of business 69-67 against Texas. And this LSU team, Aaron, they continue to win these close games where they have a lead, but they find a way to hold on to the lead. Now they give it up, and things get a little hairy there at the end, but they keep winning these games and not losing them, and that's still got to be a positive.
So let me ask you, as the LSU guy, is it more fun to smack somebody around 50-7 or whatever it was, like they did to the Aggies in football, or is it more fun to be on the edge of your seat till the last possession of the game?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll tell you what, I got really comfortable watching LSU football this year. I just kind of stroll those sidelines, Aaron, and not really have a care or a worry in the world. But again, you can't argue with the wins in the win column.
Yeah, I was going to say you didn't have a care in the world for about 30 minutes of that Texas game the other day, and then they put on that full court press. No, it's incredible, and it's so impressive to me. And, one of the reasons I think you like having me on, Jake, is because, I look at every perspective of a story. And so obviously there were a lot of people kind of on the national level that had a lot of things to say about Will Wade last season. But I bring that up because when I watched that game on Saturday, the thing that stood out to me, and I tweeted out this stat, LSU after January 1st last year went 17-4 in their games. And obviously, one of those losses was in the SEC tournament. One of those losses was in the NCAA tournament. They are now 7-0 after January 1st of this year. And what that says to me is if you don't live in Baton Rouge, whatever you think of Will Wade, I think it's pretty incredible his ability to not only have his team ready to play, but have success in the biggest games of the season. Now, this year particularly, the biggest games are ahead, but I'm just so impressed by the way that these guys continue to play close games, win close games, execute late. As you know, you're somebody that's lived this stuff, Jacob. It's completely different in the final few seconds or the final few minutes in overtime, and this team continues to have success in the most crucial moments, in the most crucial games. I've just been so impressed of that element of it with LSU basketball.
Visiting with Aaron Torres of Fox Sports. Aaron, 8 wins in a row by LSU. They've now cracked the top 25 in all the polls, anywhere from 22 to 24. Is that about right? Where, in your opinion, where they should be right now? And what do you think the ceiling is for this team? How much better can they get?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that ranking is about right because the rankings are really on the totality of the season. And listen, we all know they struggled early in the year with some of those early season losses, VCU, Utah State, et cetera. But I think that the ranking is fair. I also don't think it's reflective of the fact that they're playing the best basketball of anybody in the SEC right now. And you could argue, I don't think there's 5 teams in America that are hotter than them. So I think it's an incredible testament to what they've done so far. It feels about right in terms of how much better they can get. You know, I do think I talked about this a little bit on last week's when you had me on last week, but the SEC this year is a really bizarre league. It's not nearly as tough at the top as it was last year when you had 3 really, really good teams and obviously Auburn, who ended up making a Final Four. I think Kentucky's really good. They've had a couple really tough road wins. But then after that, if we're not talking about LSU, of course, we're talking about the teams that they'll play. There's nobody that jumps out as like, oh, man, like it's going to take an extra special night to take care of these guys. And so I only bring that up because it really just does feel like there are going to be wins to continue to be piled up in this league. And if LSU takes care of business against the teams that they're supposed to, I do think they'll be again in contention, not only for an SEC regular season title, but maybe just as importantly, a really good seed in the NCAA tournament. And it kind of goes without saying, the lower your seed is, the smaller the number, the easier the path becomes to make a deep run.
Aaron, when you look at the SEC standings, LSU is the only undefeated basketball team, but when you hear people talk about the league, and you mentioned it, look, the league's not as good at the top as it was a year ago when you had Tennessee, LSU, Kentucky, and Auburn all could make Final Four runs, and nobody would argue that. But I do think in the middle and the bottom of the league, there is parity there, but still LSU, the only undefeated team, and everybody is still talking about Kentucky. They're talking about Auburn. They're talking about still the Florida Gators, who LSU beat inside the PMAC last week. Why is LSU not getting that love as far as they could win the SEC, in your opinion?
Well, I think one, Kentucky does have kind of the more signature wins when you go to Texas Tech, which is coming off of a Final Four, coming off a national championship game appearance, and you get a win there, even if they're maybe not quite as good as last year. I think that's what people are going to focus on. Kentucky, of course, also has beaten Michigan State, which is tied for first place in the Big Ten. They've beaten Louisville, tied for first place in the ACC. And so, again, it's kind of the signature of those wins. And then I think the other thing with LSU, and I find myself guilty of this, is you win so many close games at first, up until maybe a week ago, you start to say, well, they're due to have a couple balls bounce the other way, and they're going to lose a couple of these eventually. But when the balls keep bouncing your way, at some point, 1, it becomes your identity, and 2, it doesn't become a coincidence. And so I think finally to the question about being ranked for the first time in a while, I think that speaks to the pollsters, and I'm not a voter, but I know a lot of them kind of saying like, okay, 1 or 2 close wins could feel fluky, but when you have 5, 6, 7 in a row that are 1 possession or in overtime or come down to the final possession or whatever, and you're winning all of them, that means that you're starting to turn into a pretty good basketball team. And so I just think those are the 2 factors, and I think as long as they continue to win these games, no matter how close they are, the pollsters, the voters, et cetera, will acknowledge the Tigers.
All right, Aaron, I said it in the beginning. You cover college basketball, but also college football. So the news breaks today. Bo Pelini, we all expected it over the last couple of days. It's a name that we heard is coming back to LSU as a defensive coordinator. I know me personally, I'm excited about it. Bo was here when I was here. I think the world of Bo Pelini. I think he's an outstanding motivator. I think he brings an aggressive nature to this defense. What do you think about the hire of Bo Pelini as defense coordinator?
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting, and obviously, you kind of saw the name start to surface here over the last couple of days, and I wouldn't say I know him well or know him at all, frankly, outside of media availabilities and things like that. But, I thought he seemed pretty comfortable, kind of doing his thing back in his hometown. But obviously coming to LSU, like you said, I mean, the thing that really kind of jumped out to me was that he had been there, and I remember during the title season him being the defensive coordinator. But I think he's going to bring exactly what everybody else thinks he's going to bring, which is energy, which is enthusiasm, which is toughness. And the great thing is, it's so different, right? Like I think he got a little bit of a bad reputation that maybe he was too he had too much of a quick fuse and too much of a hot temper when he was the head coach at Nebraska. But Jacob, correct me if I'm wrong. That's what you want from your defensive coordinator, right? Like you let the head coach kind of balance the locker room, and you
Right.
let the head coach kind of make the pregame speech. But it's like if the defensive coordinator is the one that's ready to bang his head on a wall or run through a wall or whatever, I think that's good. I think the energy that he'll bring is good. And then obviously you've seen firsthand and could speak to it better than I could about schematically what he's going to bring. But I like the move a lot. And I continue to respect Ed Orgeron bringing in people that are smart, people that are going to challenge him, people that are going to make Ed Orgeron better as a coach. And this feels like another one of those kind of hires.
And we were talking about before you came on, and Aaron Torres of Fox Sports Radio is our guest here on Hanging with Hester. His time in Nebraska at the time, people thought it could be more.
Yes.
As he leaves and goes elsewhere, people in Nebraska finding out, you know what? Maybe Bo did a great job here in Nebraska.
It's so funny. It's such a great point. I hadn't even thought of it from that perspective, but it is amazing because, I remember this year I was arguing with somebody about the University of Michigan and Jim Harbaugh. And, he's underachieving and he's this and he's that. And I said, well, I'll tell you what. Yeah, or maybe it was something in comparison to Scott Frost with Jim Harbaugh. I can't remember. Jim Harbaugh through 2 years won this many games, and Scott Frost won this many games. And everyone says, well, it's a completely different thing. Michigan's had so much more success over the last whatever years. I said, go look at from about 2009 to about 2015. They pretty consistently finished about an 8, 9, 10-win team and in the top 25. Now, they never had those signature wins. They never had a Big Ten title, a postseason appearance in a major bowl game. But it's such a great point by you, Jacob, is especially with where Nebraska is now, I think they would love a little of Bo Pelini's success. They would take that in a heartbeat.
9-4, 10-4, 10-4, 9-4, 10-4, 9-4, and 9-3.
Wow.
The worst he ever did at Nebraska was 9-4.
That's unbelievable.
Poor guy.
How about that?
I mean, they would pay $8 million a year for that right
67
now.
and 27, 39 and 17, and that's going in the Big 12 and the Big 10.